How are you? Welcome to my Monday morning here. Finn is on the couch. I just let him out of his crate. Cora's chilling over here too. But I just finished up what is going to be, or I'm going to try out as a new morning routine. And one issue that I'm anticipating right away as I say that is that I find myself being better at morning routine and kind of like moving into the week slowly, moving into my day slowly at the beginning of the week. I have a hard time like as the week goes on, I feel like, and days start to change and stuff like that. I like a slow transition into a Monday. So all that to say, I would love for this to be my daily routine, but if nothing else, we'll at least start it as a Monday morning routine currently. So I'm going to run you through what I'm playing with, and then we will get into today's share, which is basically going to be about just kind of like where I'm at. See, I've kind of been documenting my job search here and kind of where I'm at personally and professionally with that. So I'm going to share more on that. But before we do that, I want to run you through what I did today, which I've got a mess of things set up here. I'll see if I can continue this because Finn's going to get really loud with that bone. But let me walk you through this.
All right, so we've got a few different parts of this process, starting with the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. But by the way, how do vloggers do this stuff? I'm trying to film, but I only have one hand. How am I supposed to open a book? Okay, there we go. Got this from Jesse last year, actually, for Christmas. I read it for the month of January, and that was pretty much it. But it's pretty cool. Comes in with a quote from a Stoic, and then Ryan Holiday just does a quick little snippet on breaking that down and what that means. Really kind of digestible way to get in a little bit of wisdom. Stoicism is something that resonates deeply with me. On to Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. I've always loved his pod. Let's see if I can do this one-handed thing again. Always loved his podcast. Really appreciate his long form, the guests that he has, the conversations. So I bought this a couple of years ago, and I've just really not dug into it all that much. It's been one of those things where it just went and sat on my shelf. So I'm pulling it back out. Again, very digestible, short chapters here with these really brilliant individuals that he's interviewed, and just kind of like breaks down some of the favorites from his conversations with them. And there's a few sections to this. I think there's 3. It's like healthy, wealthy, and wise or something like that. I am starting with the wealthy one. And yeah, so I read the first section on this, and like I said, really good. Just really kind of gets you a quick little hit into some wisdom, and yeah, just really like sitting with that. Moving on to the third and final piece of this process, which is pulling a tarot card. Tarot is actually something that I have fallen in love with, thanks to Jesse. It's a really, really interesting tool. I actually picked up this tarot deck at a local place here in Raleigh. This is the card that I pulled on this particular day, which is fun because 12 is my favorite number. And this card actually means slowing down and shifting your perspective can really help you with where you're at. And yep, very pertinent for where I'm at right now. And got that book. It's got a little thing that comes with the deck as well, so I can learn. Finally here, yep, Finn got that all messed up. He drooled all over it. I just wrote down some things that kind of came up for me as I went through this process, kind of notes that I made through the readings, and just in general how I'm feeling, which felt like a really meaningful way to kind of concrete these things, as well as just allow myself a little bit of space for creativity.
All right, so much for sharing where I'm at. Be doing that in a few. Right now, outside with the pups. Finn was a little antsy. Cora, as usual, wants to play. So figured I'd run them a little bit so that I can really sit down and focus and be present with that before lunchtime. And yeah, playtime. Playtime. Playtime.
Yeah. Good girl. You got them both, huh? You got both the toys? Look at that. Got a double. Yeah. Yeah. Come here. Yeah. Yeah. Come here.
Hey there, friend. Here we are, sitting down. If you are on the vlog here, thanks for hanging out. If you are listening on the pod, go on over to YouTube and search Benjamin Fritz. You can check out what you missed. It is a new morning routine that I'm working on, and that I've really just I'm coming into because it feels good, not forcing it or by any particular framework or anything like that. Just something that feels good to me as I transition into kind of a new chapter of my life. Speaking of new chapters, let me update you on what's going on. I didn't film any videos, or I should say record anything, because I didn't do anything on the pod last week either. It was a week of just kind of taking some space with this creative process and like really leaning into it and wanting it to feel good and authentic, but still wanting to show up. It's like I haven't held myself to anything in terms of a number of recordings a week or anything like that. It's just kind of, at least in this transition interim period, something that I'm just going with the flow on. And so yeah, I've been doing like 2 recordings a week for, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks there, and then last week was 0, which, like I said, I'm okay with, and actually kind of fits to describe like what last week was for me, where I'm at, where things are at. And what that is that last week was just like a slow week in general in terms of developments and exciting things happening. I feel like throughout this process over, the past month, but especially the past couple months, things have been different. Kind of almost every day, but definitely weekly. So last week was just felt a little bit of like a flat line, kind of like a humming along. Now there is one thing that did come about last week, which I'll share. But other than that, it was pretty chill. But chill in a way that didn't feel so good, which, yeah, kind of brings me to the overall feeling of last week and just my experience in general, which was, and this totally makes sense too. I shared this with some friends that I caught up with. Like, it's not a surprise whatsoever. And this is like what the process is, but it still doesn't, even if it's predictable and logical, it doesn't really make it that much. Like, you can't just be like, oh, okay, well, because it was that, then I don't feel anything, or it's neutral or whatever. So that is, now that I've been doing this for a few weeks now that I had a couple leads, had some momentum and some energy going into things, and not much like the one thing that looked really promising fell through. And then it's kind of been crickets on all the other fronts, both from referral sources, their like job, those things didn't pan out, or they're not getting back to me, or like any number of things, but it's just kind of like those have quieted down a little bit. And then just like all the applying for jobs that I've done on LinkedIn, like still going to their websites and stuff like that. It's not just on LinkedIn, because I know a lot of times they don't respond to those very quickly. But basically with all of that, last week was like radio silence. Just like literally nothing. And so yeah, just like really, the riding the wave. This is new. I'm going into it with optimism and excitement. You guys have been along for that ride if you've been here. And then just kind of like, poof, just like nosedived last week. Which, as I said, is par for the course, right? Like that's what happens with this stuff. Particularly as I'm recording this on December 13th, we are now moving into the end of year, where sure, some of these teams may have been hiring going into the end of the year, wanting to make hires in December to, still get within budget or for tax reasons or whatever companies do. But now we're to the point where the chances of people looking at stuff, digging through resumes, applications, whatever, or, reaching out to me, responding back to this stuff in the next 2 weeks before the end of the year is just, it's just not gonna, it's not that it couldn't happen, but it's, for the most part, it's not going to be something that I'm expecting. Like, yeah, it's just not a priority for companies right now. So, yeah, so just feeling bummed out by that. While I was, the stretch goal, like optimism, was having a job by the end of the year would have felt really good. The more realistic goal was just to have some real momentum and some actual perspective things to consider going into the new year, with hopes of wrapping things up, early next year and being able to start something pretty quickly in the new year. So to feel like those irons aren't in the fire is frustrating. Yeah, it definitely is frustrating. I am trying to stay optimistic. I know, I'm just kind of leaning into that trust of this is going exactly how it should go. I talked a little bit about this when I talked about not getting that one job, getting rejected from that after being pretty excited about it and feeling like it would have been a really good fit. So I know deep down somewhere that it's just a matter of time until like the right thing comes across my plate. But it does feel demoralizing. And again, I truly know that people do like job searches for like months, like month over month of this. And so I'm not sitting over here trying to bitch about, I've been doing this for a month and I haven't got a job, poor me. No, like I know this is how the process goes, as I mentioned before, but I'm just sharing that is my experience of it currently. Is like there was a lot of optimism and kind of initial excitement and things like that, feeling like there was momentum, and now it's like, bleh. So with that, like I said, there is one other thing. But before I share that, going into the end of the year here, the challenge for myself is going to be not dwelling on the situation and how I see it, and having a frustrated or disappointed experience of that. Like, yes, I'm allowing myself that, but I don't want to sit in that for the next 2 weeks, for the rest of the year, because I am working this week, a couple client calls, this week, and then I will be taking kind of like the rest of the year off, which I'm really looking forward to. Jesse and I have really enjoyed that in the past couple of years. And so I don't want that time, especially given the immensity, I guess, of this life transition for me, because it's not just like a short season thing. It's not just a transition from, oh, like this happened this year and now we're transitioning into this. Like, this is like a huge shift for me. This is a decade of trying to find myself and figure out my place in the world and the work that I want to do and all these things, finding my partner, really leaning into starting a family, like all of those things. I feel like this very formative decade of my life post-college is coming to an end. And so that is something that I don't want to, quote unquote, waste by sitting here stressed or anxious about not having a job lined up. I want to be able to enjoy these next 2 weeks as a time of reflection. I want to give myself space to just be. One, for reflection, to reflect both on this year, because it's really kind of interesting and cool to look at what this past year, has been in hindsight, like how I've gotten to this point, but then also to see that in the context of what, as I was just saying, the past decade of my life has been. I really want to soak all that in, and then the second part is just like to enjoy time with Jesse. Like I said, it's been a kind of a weird year for us as a family. She started her own business a year ago, like she left corporate, started doing that, and so that was an adjustment for us to get into that. Then there were, like, she's struggled with physical health challenges, just gaining weight and not being able to really figure out what's going on with that, making dietary changes and dealing with her own emotional eating stuff, and then depression on and off throughout this time period. But at the same time, all this has been really beneficial to not be in a job that was so toxic. So it's just been like, it's been a year for her, and then for me to do business a little bit differently this year, to try things, to have levels of success, to have things that just like totally touched my heart and soul, and to have this window into where I want to go in the long term of my life. And then for, the miscarriage and the fallout of that, and then this space as I try to navigate letting go of building a business into this, new professional phase for me, and just a new way of being in literally all forms and fashions, is a lot. And I want to really, really be able to sit with that, to soak that all in. It's been a year, and I don't say that in a bad way, like it's just been a year. There's been a lot. And I want to sit in gratitude for all of that as well, because I have immense amounts of gratitude for what I've been through, what we've been through, what Jesse's been through herself. And I can just see how this is opening us up to the rest of our lives individually, but also as a couple, as a partnership, as a team, as a unit, as a family. And I'm wanting to really be with that. And so as I say all this, I'm sure this is the universe's way of granting me that time. Like, you don't have to, like, I'm not in the onboarding phases of a job right now. I'm not hitting the ground running, because that one job I would have been like immediately in the thick of things and working hard, which I'm totally open to working hard, but to do it during this season maybe wasn't the right thing for me. And so that's the way that I am choosing to look at this is I think the universe is just kind of giving me this space to do everything that I just said. So yeah, I'm going to continue to lean into that. But the one thing that did come through and that is interesting and is on the table is that I actually heard from my old boss from my my very first job out of college as a business intelligence consultant. We've maintained a relationship since I left there through social media. Basically, she follows me on Instagram and stuff like that, and she had messaged and was like, "Hey, like, what kind of stuff are you looking for?" And so yeah, we started a dialogue, and my initial thoughts, not thoughts on that, my initial feelings on that came up were, I definitely had resistance to it. It scared me at first because, not because of her, definitely not because of her. She's great. We have a great dynamic. Not because of the job even necessarily, because like I had said this ever since I left the job. I never hated what I did. I just didn't feel super engaged in it. And it was because I was, had all this energy of trying to I wanted to figure all these other things out. I wanted to experience all this other stuff in life. And I felt very boxed in that I couldn't do that. So I've always said that I never hated my job. It just didn't feel right. So I had this resistance to that, but I'm like, well, it wasn't really the job. And so as I got curious about that, I was like, why is there so much resistance to this? And it's simply because of what that time of my life meant. And then there are these other things, people, corporation, job around it. And so that's where the resistance was stemming from, was like, this is something I ran from. This is something that didn't feel good to me. And I said, fuck this. And I want to go, do a 180 and go in this other direction. And it was a very successful thing for me. Like I gained so much from that. And I'm so grateful that I did that for myself and had all the experiences that I've had over the past decade. So I had that awareness of, it wasn't about anything specific really. It was more so just the energy of, quote unquote, going back to that initially kind of had some resistance in my body towards. But once I acknowledged that, I was able to say, well, I'm in a very different place now. And the things that I know about myself, the things that I feel about work, and the way that I relate to work and things that I do is just so drastically different than it was 9.5 years ago or whatever it was when I quit my job. 8.5 years, I guess. So I was open to the conversation, and I ended up talking to her over the weekend, and yeah, it was just I essentially felt like, I don't know if you're watching, I don't know if you felt like this, but for me, I just felt very natural. It felt like we had never, it was we took a month off or something from working at, where we were before, and just kind of picked right back up. Just felt super natural, very comfortable, and yeah, a situation that I would potentially be open to. So there are some key dominoes that have to fall on her end in order to know how things will move forward, but that'll be at least a week or two, it looks like, on that. And so I kind of, there was a little bit of a development. It wasn't completely nothing this past week. That was, because it is very interesting to me. And yeah, I would welcome the opportunity if all the pieces of it look right. It looks right from a high level. But once I learn a little bit more, obviously I will be able to make a judgment call. But yeah, otherwise I am excited for what that could be. Does feel good. A lot of the pieces of the company set me up in a way that the lifestyle aspects of it feel really good. In terms of it's work from home, it's a remote job. like pretty flexible, and so all things that I value. So yeah, so that is something that's on the plate. That's kind of just sitting on the back burner, then marinating. Well, I guess if it's on a back burner, it'd be simmering. So yeah, so there's that. There is the broader scope of everything else that I just kind of laid out. And so, like I said, I'm really just kind of leaning into trusting that I am exactly where I need to be. The difficult part is, of course, money. It's a real thing, right? Worrying about where that where it will come from, when it will come, because I'm not making I'm scaling down my business, right? Like as I'm getting ready for this change and anticipating this change in my life, this transition. So I don't have a bunch of money coming in right now. I am still driving Uber Eats on the weekends to make a couple $100 a weekend. But as I mentioned before, it's, our expenses are high and stuff like that. So it's just tough to not know where money's coming from or when it's coming in. So I'm sitting with that very real, just kind of human knowing in the back of my head, but trying not to dwell on that. Yeah, just leaning into the spiritual side of things for me, which, like I said, is just the trust that things are working out the way they should. I'm just trying to show up the best way possible. I'm just doing what I can, right? Like showing up, connecting with people, applying for jobs. There's not much more that I can be doing, and I'm trying not to be hard on myself, because it feels like we can always do more. I know at the end of last week, I was like, oh, well, you could have applied for more jobs. And I was like, immediately caught myself and was like, no, it's like you did what you could do, and that's what you need. And then, yeah, just really leaning into enjoying time with family, friends, and Jesse during this time. Like I said, it's a beautiful time of year. I want it to be that. I don't want to miss out on this reflective, slow period that we get and are afforded at the end of and going into the turn of the year. So that's where I'm at. If there's anything you would like to share, comment on, feedback, insight, I always, if you're still listening, I always invite this at the end of these recordings because I do truly care about you. I enjoy walking this path with you, which is why I'm sharing. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to hit me up on, if you're watching on YouTube or if you are here on the pod, hit me up on Instagram, at benjamin.m.fritz. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I'll talk to you soon. Much love, Benjamin.